Welcome to another Problem with Video, in which I tell you what I find to be the problems with the things that I enjoy. This is an opinion-based video in which I'm going to tell you definitively what is wrong with stuff. And today's video is brought to you by GamerSupps! I almost fell out of the chair. Because I technically did fall out of the chair, didn't I? Anyway, GamerSupps is an energy supplement that you can use to get that kind of energy. It's less chalky than its competitors, but they also have a lot of fun with it by creating things like waifu cups, waifu hoodies, and things that are similar to that. And you too can take your GamerSupps and skate around your room trying to get yourself a plastic cup. I almost died to give you that ad promo. Now let's talk about the problem with the MCU. Oh, and click the link down below. I forgot to the key. Click the link down below if you want to get some GamerSupps. It's kind of the important bit. If you appreciate me almost dying, click the link. So when I'm looking for problems with the MCU or Marvel Comics, I do what a lot of you do, and I look for like-minded individuals who are creating videos who 100% agree with me, and if they disagree with me and even 1% of what I think is accurate, I want to let them know in the comments down below. Right, I mean, that's what we all do. And what I've seen a lot of is people saying that 17 movies and TV shows is just far too many to put out. I'll agree to some extent, yeah. They really upped their ante and it created a situation in which we didn't care. Oh no, but the visual effects have tanked and it's causing a lot of issues. Did you see what She-Hulk looked like? It was garbage. And I'll agree with you on that one too. A lot of the CG and the visual effects have gone to crap. And oh my god, the MCU is doing stuff that I don't personally like She-Hulk and Moon Knight, and who the hell thought a cartoon about What If was a good idea? Okay, you're right. 17 movies and TV shows, they did try some new stuff in there, and some of it just didn't hit. Moon Knight and She-Hulk for me were two that I thought were okay, but nothing to write home about. You know, we all could agree and disagree on what the popular ones were and what their actual problems were and stuff like that, but without going into any crazy political arguing about what direction the MCU should take or has taken, I think it's actually a different thing that is causing the primary issue with the MCU. Visual effects and the amount of product that they were putting out aside, there's one big issue, and that's the story. So up until the beginning of the first Avengers, the story was all about these individual Avengers getting their own individual movies. Those individual movies then built towards the Avengers. That was the story. What happens if we have all of these superheroes in one location and then some big bad, Loki with the aliens, arrives? What if they all were to team up? And that revealed the through line, the overarching story. The Avengers have been created, but what is Thanos? What is Thanos after? Moving forward from the Avengers after that, we had a situation in which we would get new products, new superheroes, new stuff coming out, but at the same time, we were constantly being reminded and bombarded with Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor. They were the through line. They were the heroes. They either got a cameo or they at the minimum got a mention within these other movies. Stuff like the Avengers battle in New York would come up in the brand new superheroes movies. Following the first Avengers movie, we had Thanos at the end of it, and the overall story was arising. But you know what Phase 2 had? Nothing really new. Phase 2 primarily had Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, so 2, and Captain America the Winter Soldier, Captain America 2. We got a brand new movie with the Guardians of the Galaxy, but that started to bring the cosmic scale to light, started to hint at things that Thanos would be a part of. And throughout all of this, we had these MacGuffin things that would later become the Infinity Stones. This led to the Avengers Age of Ultron. So phases 1 and 2 were just telling the same story. Here's Iron Man, here's Thor, here's Captain America, and they're the Avengers. And what happens after the Avengers? Well, they all have to go back, and they constantly reference the Avengers and how they all teamed up, and it was this one cohesive storyline. We then get peppered in with things like, here's Guardians of the Galaxy and Ant-Man. But Phase 2, which took place over the course of 2 years, it literally had 6 movies. So that means we had 3 movies a year for the most part. I believe it was kind of bridged out even a little further than that, because looking at this, the dates on these, they were 2 per year, but they were kind of close at times. Either way, 2 per year for 3 years. We weren't getting oversaturated with the MCU. We weren't getting flooded with it. And we had one cohesive storyline because at the end of Avengers, we saw Thanos and he was coming to do it himself. Now, comic book fans knew that this meant the Infinity Stones, and that's when they started to tie things together and turn them into Infinity Stones. But the story just continued from that point on. It was just the Avengers. Ant-Man came out after Age of Ultron, so a lot of people mistakenly place it into Phase 3, and Guardians of the Galaxy came out right before Age of Ultron. So if both of those had tanked, they literally put Age of Ultron in the middle. So the MCU is doing fine. Phase 3 was 2016 to 2019. And while they started off with 2 movies a year, they did up the ante to 3 a year to get us to Endgame. Now, over the course of that period, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 total movies in the span of 3 years. Now, this is why I agree with 17 projects in 2 years is just way too many. Because the Endgame phase was very long, but it still didn't feel like it was too jam-packed. We were still getting about 3 movies a year for the most part. Now, during this period, we again got a Captain America 3. We got a Thor 3. So that continued on those characters. But during this period, we were introduced to brand new characters. Doctor Strange got his first movie, and people thought it was okay. Spider-Man got his first movie, and everyone freaked out. Love or hate Homecoming, everyone loves Spider-Man. Guardians of the Galaxy at this point was already a success. They worked, so they got a sequel. Black Panther was huge. Everyone couldn't believe Black Panther was getting a movie, and the movie was incredible. Then we had some lackluster ones. Ant-Man and the Wasp came out. The sequel to Ant-Man wasn't so great. Captain Marvel, depends on who you talk to. I thought it was an okay movie, but the box office tells you that everyone loved it or at least went to see it, and that's all that Marvel cares about. And to end up all of this, we got Spider-Man 2 in the same phase. Again, they didn't try very many new things. Black Panther was introduced in Civil War. Marvel knew that this was going to be a success. And since Civil War came out in 2016 and Black Panther came out in 2018, they gave themselves plenty of time if Black Panther got backlash and wasn't liked. So really, the only brand new character that got introduced in this phase would have been Captain Marvel and Doctor Strange. That's it. 2 still very popular Marvel characters. When it comes to Captain Marvel, depends on who you talk to and whether or not they actually read Civil War 2, but that's a totally different discussion. Anyway, but that's where we get to Phase 4. Now, up until this point, I agree. Visual effects were great. Having maximum 11 movies coming out of that period, yeah, that we had just enough. We weren't getting oversaturated. And that's when we got into Phase 4. Now, oversaturation and visual effects aside, you have to look at what they tried to do with this phase. We had no ongoing story. We had no ongoing characters. You could argue that phases 1, 2, and 3 weren't about the Infinity Stones. They were not about Thanos. As a matter of fact, I'm one of the people that thinks that Endgame didn't work as a solo movie because it was all about the encompassing storyline that they had built up to that point. An incredible movie. I've argued for a long time that it just would not stand if you hadn't watched all the other MCU projects. And yes, I know. Why would you go watch Endgame if you hadn't seen the other MCU projects, Benny? That's everyone's counterpoint. But you know what? Endgame broke box office numbers into the gajillions, and guess what? Guarantee you at least one person didn't see the rest of the MCU. I would love to meet that person and see what their opinion of Endgame was. But anyway, Phase 4 contained a Black Widow movie that should have come out back in Phase 2, Falcon and Winter Soldier TV show. Now, this was them trying to get people to watch the Disney Plus shows. Eternals movie, brand new cast, barely references what's going on other than, yeah, that was a Thanos thing that we didn't get involved in. Shang-Chi basically doesn't reference anything going on in the Marvel universe until its post-credit scene, and apparently that was supposed to tie into Ant-Man but got thrown out the window because no one liked the ending to Ant-Man. WandaVision, another Disney Plus experiment. Loki, arguably probably the best Disney Plus show, was also another Disney Plus experiment. Spider-Man No Way Home blew up box offices. Who would have thought getting 3 Spider-Men into a movie would make it do well? Doctor Strange was the sequel to a character that was, I guess midly kind of accepted. Is midly a word? Can I make up midly? He was mid. Look, Benny's acting like he's 16. Are you cool, kids? Anyway, then we had Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Miss Marvel. All of those, you can take them or leave them. There's stuff I enjoyed about all of them, and there's stuff I disliked about all of them. Thor: Love and Thunder. Thor was great with 3 movies. We're going to end it there. And then the Hawkeye show, which was great. The point I'm making is while we can't agree that 17 projects was too many for a 2-year span of time, especially during a COVID era, and we can't agree that visual effects have taken a tank, I would argue that the problem is the story isn't there. And I'm not even stating like, oh, it didn't exist, because they were implying the multiverse and Kang in quite a few of these projects. WandaVision was heavily implying the multiverse. Loki heavily implied the multiverse. And what was it? Doctor Strange was literally called the Multiverse of Madness. Loki introduced Kang, or a Kang-related character, because that wasn't Kang, and that's just an inside joke for people who've been watching my podcast forever. And if you want to be on the inside, go to Absolutely. But anyway, that was it. Like, nothing else really implied Kang or the multiverse, which would be okay, because going back to what I said about phases 1 through 3, you could argue that it wasn't about Thanos. It wasn't about the Infinity Stone. What I would argue is that it was about the Avengers. It was about Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor coming together to build this team because they realized they needed something to stop a threat like Thanos. Thanos himself and the Infinity Stones really were just MacGuffins. Big threat coming to the planet. What's he gonna do? Use magical stones that can literally do anything that you can think of. You can't get much more MacGuffin than that. He unwound the Guardians at one point and then wiped out half of the population of the universe. It can do anything. But what was more important was Captain America and Iron Man coming together and then fighting against each other in Civil War and then being at odds. That was the interesting story. What brought Spider-Man into the proper Avengers universe was having Iron Man constantly popping up in the background, turning him into Iron Man Jr., but that's an entirely different discussion as to why that's not really Spider-Man. It's just Iron Man Jr. with the spider on his chest, but we can have that talk later. Having situations like Black Panther being introduced to the universe by fighting against Captain America because of the Winter Soldier. Like, things like this is what introduced everything into the universe and gave us this big, sprawling, interconnected universe. Going all the way back to Iron Man 1, seeing a Captain America shield on the desk that we all thought was just a fun Easter egg, to becoming Captain America teaming up with Iron Man. Phases 1 and 2 weren't that experimental. And even when they were, with Guardians of the Galaxy and Ant-Man, they were still heavily implied to be in this universe, with the Guardians being the cosmic side of the MCU and implying Infinity Stones and Thanos and all this stuff is real. Where did that character come from? Ant-Man, you could argue, was a little outside of the usual wheelhouse of the Avengers, but while I can't think of the connections off the top of my head, I guarantee there was mentions to what's going on and how it was tied together. The problem with Phase 4 is that we don't have any of that. Thor didn't show up in some random spot. Iron Man's not checking in on Spider-Man in the third movie. We don't have Captain America being this overarching sign of justice and morality and everyone has to follow him. We aren't referencing a realistic event that could matter, like aliens invading New York. When they reference the snap, the MCU doesn't want to think about the dark side of the concept of the snap, so they don't really reference the snap. We've had a few cool moments, like in WandaVision when we saw what happened with Monica Rambeau and stuff like that, but for the most part, we don't reference the snap. Thanos and all of that is like, well, they talk about it on podcasts, and it's a lot of fun. They try their hardest to remind you that this is in the MCU without having a proper through line. The big bad is the multiverse, and the big bad is Kang that was defeated by Ant-Man? What? Like, that doesn't give you some impending doom. We have no need for the Avengers to reassemble. We have no grandfathered Avengers to lead anyone on. That is what I would argue was the problem with Phase 4. How much better could Phase 4 have been if the Ms. Marvel show also involved S.H.I.E.L.D. somehow directly being involved because they were trying to recruit it to the Avengers? That's another thing. They bring up the Avengers. In the latest Marvel's trailer, she's like, am I trying out for the Avengers? Who's the Avengers? Who's left? Is it Falcon? Is he officially Captain America? Because we don't even know the timeline. Like, did he become Captain America? Is there a background Avengers group being made up right now? Where did Bucky go at the end of that show? That is the issue, in my opinion, as to what's happening with the MCU. None of this is linked together. We just have outlier Marvel movies. Phases 1 through 3, 3 being the most ballsy of 1 through 3. Even that one closely tied everything together. Guardians 2, they were talking about Thanos and they were heading back and they were running into those problems. Doctor Strange is the outlier. That's the outlier character, okay? And there was a lot of faith in the MCU at that point. But when we get to Phase 4, our outliers, our test bed, is a show all about Loki, a show all about Wanda in an alternate reality that's going to play out weird and be experimental. I mean, there was a lot of experiments here. Wanda being like a sitcom, but it wasn't a sitcom with an underlying tone. She-Hulk is literally just what I like to call your C-level sitcom. It's not great. You pop it on while eating popcorn. Moon Knight featured Moon Knight for 14 minutes. That's 6 episodes. How is that not experimental? Can we do a superhero TV show without a superhero? Like, what? The ones that seem to do the best during Phase 4 are existing characters, Spider-Man, or it directly relates to what's going on in the overarching storyline. Oh, Spider-Man again. At this point, I just feel like I'm rambling and bringing up the same points, but what I feel is the actual issue is not the visual effects. It's not the amount of product, because I feel like both of those would have been excusable if there was a through line. The worst times in Marvel Comics is the times like right now. How are they interconnected? How is Marvel connected as to what's going on? Because I don't know about you, but the Avengers have been doing their own thing for 3 years over there with Avengers Forever. The X-Men have been locked off on Krakoa, and they're doing interconnectivity with the X-Men. And Spider-Man's doing his own thing. And then we just have random Marvel comics. The closest we got to them being interconnected was Axe. And Axe was overall a good event, but what the hell led up to Axe? Nothing. There was no buildup. There was nothing coming out of it. There was no a bunch of books. There was no like Spider-Man comic where he's like, what's going on? Do you remember this? I'm talking to you other old hats who have been reading comics forever. The eras of Secret Invasion, the eras of Secret Wars. Every comic reflected what is going on. Secret Wars literally interrupted comic book runs that had nothing to do with Secret Wars to put them into Secret Wars. And some could argue that that's bad. But I would argue that that gets us to read all the comics, and that's what makes us interested in the MCU. Those little interconnected moments. Turning the post-credit scenes into jokes ruins those interconnected moments. It ruins what makes them all link together. Don't make it some stupid trailer that's gonna come out in 3 months. Just interconnect it. Make it me feel like I'm missing something by not doing that. Because that's what happens in the comics. When I'm reading a comic and Spider-Man talks about just a minute ago, he was running off with Iron Man and Iron Man got involved. Now I wanna know what Iron Man was doing. DC has been struggling with interconnectivity for the last 4 years. Like 2019, Dark Crisis or it was Dark Knight's Metal, the second one, the second Dark Knights thing. Ever since then, they were all over the place. We had a Black Label, we had out of continuity Batman books. I'm covering a book for you guys right now called Batman Fortress, which overall has a really cool concept and idea. And superheroes are dying, so it's not in continuity. The point I'm making is, what's hurt DC right now is there's no desire to read anything else. I don't go read Batman and then wonder what Superman's doing and wonder how Hal's involved. I don't go read Marvel and then wonder, reading through the X-Men, I forget the Avengers have a comic half the time because it hasn't been that interesting in a little while. And that's what's going on with Phase 4. We don't have that through line. There's no Avengers coming together. There is no Thanos. There is no Infinity Stones. What there is a guy that got defeated by Ant-Man and the possibility of a multiverse, which is now not a possibility, it's a thing, but that's not a threat. That's not a problem. Your average moviegoer doesn't even know that the incursions are a thing. And that's actually going to be the problem with the multiverse. But there's no big bad for you to aim the non-existent Avengers at. The incursions is the idea that multiversal worlds are going to slam. And they said that that's a problem that we're worried about. They didn't point them at a bad guy. They didn't say that this is causing the incursions. Nothing. Like, we have the incursions. The incursion is called Secret Wars in the comics, for those of you who don't know. But that's where it could go. We don't have that. We don't have Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor making the Avengers. We don't have the big bad. And that's what I feel is the problem. And I feel it's the big problem in comic books right now, is that what makes comic books stand out over manga? Because I read a lot of manga. We have a channel. It's called Mangastorian. I talk about what I read. Manga's amazing because I can have 1,000 chapters of One Piece and it's one ongoing storyline written by one guy. But what makes comics stand out over manga, what makes them separate, is that we can have 9 Batman stories written by 9 different people, and they're all different tones, personalities, and behaviors. But what I can also have is a Batman, Superman, Hal Jordan book where they team up and they go across, and there's a big bad that they have to team up against. Dawn of DC is what DC is doing right now, and they have already implied that we are building up to 2 big events. We're building up to Night Terrors, which is some kind of Halloween horror-based thing, and then we have Brainiac. That means that the DC universe is working on interconnectivity once again because they realized how much it was hurting to not do it. That means that the DC comic books are all going to start finding things related to these big bads, that they're all going to team up, that they're all going to work towards a common goal. In Marvel, we haven't had that since Secret Wars. We've got Spider-Man doing Spider-Man stuff with Venom and Ben Reilly and stuff. We got the X-Men doing X-Men stuff over on Krakoa, and the Avengers somehow just got completely separated by, I think, Jason Aaron, and he's like done 9 different Avengers books that all in. I don't know how that works. I don't know what happened there. I love the Avengers book, but how is it just its own out-of-continuity timeline? What? Doesn't make any sense, man. Anyway, at this point, I really am just going to start rambling and re-looping exactly what I stated, and I try not to do that. Dan's probably already cut out a couple of the lines in which I kind of repeated what I'm saying. But to end it, to bring it all down, to bring the too long did not read, you skip to the end of the video because I don't know why you would do that. Dan probably didn't put up any real images up here. I don't know why you did that. Why'd you skip to the ending? But anyway, the point I'm making is that I think most of what people claim to be a problem with the MCU would be forgivable. It would be something we would laugh at, we'd make fun of, but we'd all do it in fun and in jest. And I think a lot of the hatred and why we pinpoint moments that look terrible, or the fact that we point out that there's way too many things coming out, is because we don't have a reason to care. Why should you care about She-Hulk? If She-Hulk is going to be 9 episodes that don't mention or bring up anything really involved in the overarching MCU, the only thing that we even have that closely ties it to the MCU is the appearance of the Hulk. And outside of that, it's just bad sitcom. And then why should you even care even more if the ending of She-Hulk shows that the MCU could be broken at any moment by She-Hulk, so we can't bring She-Hulk back? Why should you care about Moon Knight if Moon Knight's not going to reference anything? If Moon Knight's just going to be like a weird National Treasure Indiana Jones style adventure that ends with him becoming Moon Knight? Like, and I get it. I get Oscar Isaac didn't want it to be connected, but that's a problem when your entire thing is how connected our universe and world building is. You all hate the Eternals, but at least they mentioned Thanos. Like, we've gotten to the point where people don't even mention what's going on. And that's why I was excited for Phase 5 until Ant-Man killed Kang. Oh, man. I'm so scared of Kang. Ant-Man beat you. Ant-Man. I like Ant-Man, but he shouldn't beat Kang. Anyway, that's the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know down below if you agree or disagree, because I know what's wrong with the Phase 4 thing is like a big hot topic right now in our community, and I'd like to get your opinions as to what you think is going on. My name is Benny. You can like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Every Wednesday, I give you my opinions on things that I'm 100% factually correct about, and please don't. Just anyway, I'll see you next time.